The Harlem Jazz Hall pulsed with the rhythm of a sultry saxophone, its neon glow cutting through the 1920s New York fog. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and anticipation. Clara Beaumont, the queen of jazz, was to perform. But the velvet curtain never rose. In her dressing room, Clara lay lifeless, a crimson stain blooming across her sequined gown, a letter opener's wound in her heart. No weapon, no witnesses, only whispers of envy and betrayal. Hercule Poirot, summoned by a frantic manager, stroked his mustache. A puzzle worth solving. Who silenced the songbird? Chapter 1. The Silent Stage. The Harlem Jazz Hall stood like a beacon in the foggy New York night, its neon sign flickering with the promise of music and mystery. It was the autumn of 1925, and the air thrummed with the pulse of the roaring 20s. Jazz, gin, and the electric hum of ambition. Inside, the velvet curtain swayed gently, kissed by a draft that carried the faint tang of cigarette smoke and perfume. The crowd, a kaleidoscope of sequined dresses and tailored suits, buzzed with anticipation. Clara Beaumont, Harlem's reigning songbird, was to take the stage, her voice a siren's call that drew crowds from Manhattan to Brooklyn. But tonight, the stage would remain silent. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a mustache as precise as his mind, stepped from a taxi onto the slick cobblestones. His polished shoes gleamed under the streetlights, and his overcoat, immaculate despite the drizzle, hung neatly over his slight frame. He had been summoned by a frantic call from the hall's manager, a man named Harold Grayson, whose voice had crackled with panic over the telephone. "Monsieur Poirot, it's a disaster. Clara, she's dead." The words had piqued Poirot's curiosity, for a murder in such a vibrant place promised a puzzle of exquisite complexity. Inside, the jazz hall was a cathedral of sound, now eerily hushed. The chandeliers cast a golden glow over the empty tables, where half-finished emerald eyes promising secrets. The dressing room was a study in opulence and chaos. A vanity mirror, framed with bulbs, reflected the grim tableau. Clara Beaumont lay slumped on the floor, her sequined gown a cascade of silver that shimmered even in death. A crimson stain bloomed across her chest, the work of a single, precise wound. Her golden hair, once meticulously styled, fanned out like a halo, and her lips, painted ruby red, were parted as if in mid-song. The air held the faint sweetness of jasmine, her signature perfume, Poirot noted, but beneath it lingered the metallic tang of blood. He knelt beside the body, his gloved hands hovering over the scene. "The wound, it is clean," he murmured, observing the puncture at her heart. "A letter opener, perhaps, or a dagger. But where is the weapon?" His eyes scanned the room. A velvet chaise, a rack of costumes, a table cluttered with makeup and jewelry. The jewelry, emerald earrings, a diamond bracelet, remained untouched. "No robbery, Inspector," Poirot said, rising. "This was personal." Daniel scoffed. "Personal? She was a star. Everyone loved her." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Everyone, you say? Yet someone has silenced her forever. The heart, it is a treacherous thing." He moved to the vanity, where a smudged glass of champagne sat beside a torn program from that night's show. A cigarette butt, lipstick-stained, lay in an ashtray. Poirot lifted it with a handkerchief, noting the brand. Chesterfield. common but telling. "Order and method," he said softly, slipping the butt into his pocket. The door creaked open, and Louis Carver, the band leader, burst in. His slicked-back hair was disheveled, his bow tie askew. "Clara," he gasped, his voice breaking as he saw her body. His dark eyes, usually sharp with ambition, were clouded with something. Grief, fear, or perhaps guilt? She was a star. He chose tonight. He dismissed Louis, who left with a lingering glance at Clara's body. Poirot turned to the torn program, its edges frayed as if ripped in anger. The cover bore Clara's name in bold letters, but inside, Louis's initials were scrawled in the margin. A coincidence? Or a clue? Poirot's fingers brushed the program, then paused at a small object beneath it. A woman's glove, black satin, tucked behind the vanity. It was too small for Clara's hands, suggesting another presence. "The puzzle, it begins to form," he murmured. Inspector Daniels, growing impatient, gestured to the corridor. "We've got suspects lined up. Her lover, a rival singer, the stage manager. All had reasons to hate her." Poirot raised a hand. "Patience, Inspector. The truth, it reveals itself only to those who listen." He moved to Clara's purse, a beaded clutch lying open on the chaise. Inside, among lipsticks and a compact, was a folded note, its edges creased. Poirot unfolded it with care, his eyes gleaming as he read the words, "Meet me at midnight. We end this, tonight." The note was unsigned, the handwriting elegant but hurried. Poirot's mustache quivered with delight. A rendezvous, perhaps? But with whom? He tucked the note away, his mind racing. The smudged glass, the cigarette, the glove, the note, all pieces of a mosaic. But whose hand had placed them? The corridor outside buzzed with nervous energy. Stagehands whispered, their eyes darting toward the dressing room. Poirot stepped out, his presence commanding silence. A young woman, Evelyn Hart, lingered nearby, her red hair a fiery contrast to her pale face. She was Clara's rival, a singer whose star had dimmed in Clara's shadow. Her eyes, rimmed with tears, met Poirot's. "She didn't deserve this," Evelyn said, her voice trembling. But was it sorrow or a performance? Poirot noted her clutch, identical to Clara's, and the faint scent of jasmine on her skin. Clara's perfume. Curious, he thought. Next came Jimmy Tate, Clara's lover, mind a whirl of possibilities. The smudged glass suggested a visitor. The glove hinted at a woman's presence. The note promised a confrontation. Louis's ambition, Evelyn's jealousy, Jimmy's betrayal, Maggie's desperation, each a thread in the tapestry of murder. But which was the fatal stitch? Poirot returned to the dressing room, his eyes sweeping the scene once more. The torn program, the cigarette, the untouched jewelry, all spoke of a crime driven not by greed but by passion. He knelt by Clara's body, his fingers brushing the sequins of her gown. A single sequin was missing, a tiny gap in the shimmering fabric. "The smallest detail, it tells the greatest truth," he murmured. As he rose, a stagehand's shout broke the silence. "Monsieur Poirot, there's something in the props room." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his heart quickening. The game was afoot, and the Harlem Jazz Hall held its secrets tightly. But Hercule Poirot, with his order and method, would unravel them all. The props room door creaked open, revealing a blood-stained shawl hidden among the costumes. Chapter 2. The Bandleader's Tune. The Harlem Jazz Hall, though silenced by Clara Beaumont's death, seemed to hum with secrets, its walls holding the echoes of 1,000 performances. Hercule Poirot stood in the props room, where the stagehand's discovery, a blood-stained shawl tucked behind a rack of feathered costumes, had sent a ripple of murmurs through the gathered crowd. The shawl, a delicate silk piece embroidered with gold thread, bore the initials CB in one corner. Clara's, or a clever misdirection? Poirot's gloved fingers traced the fabric, noting the blood's dark crust along the edge. A clue, yes, but whose hand placed it here? He mused, his mustache twitching with the thrill of the chase. Inspector Daniels, his bulldog face creased with impatience, loomed nearby. Probably dropped by the killer in a hurry, he grunted, gesturing to the cluttered props room. Boxes of sequined masks, stacks of sheet music, and a dusty chandelier from a long-forgotten production began. You are troubled, no? The death of Mademoiselle Beaumont, it strikes you deeply. Louis's hand froze mid-drum, his glass clinking against the table. She was the heart of the band, he said, his voice rough. Without her, we're nothing. But Poirot noted the flicker in his eyes, the way his jaw tightened. Louis Carver was a man of ambition. His band once the toast of Harlem until Clara's star eclipsed his own. The torn program from her dressing room, scrawled with his initials, lingered in Poirot's mind. A coincidence, or a signature of guilt? Tell me, monsieur, Poirot continued, his tone deceptively mild. You argued with Mademoiselle Beaumont this evening, did you not? About the set list, perhaps? Louis's fingers twitched, betraying his nerves. Just a disagreement, he said quickly. She wanted to open with Midnight Blues, but I thought it was too slow. We sorted it out. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. And yet, the stagehand. He says your voices were raised, your words sharp. You resented her fame, no? Louis's face flushed, his hand gripping the glass. Resented? No. I made her what she was. My arrangements, my band, they gave her the spotlight. His voice rose, drawing glances from nearby patrons. Poirot leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. And when the spotlight shines on another, it leaves the rest in shadow. You disliked this, I think. Louis's gaze dropped, his shoulders sagging. She was trouble, he muttered. Always demanding, always stealing the show. Poirot's gray cells hummed. Louis's ambition was a motive, but was it enough to kill? He noted the bandleader's cufflink, engraved with LC, identical to the one he'd seen in the dressing room. And the stain on his suit. Ink, yes, but could it be blood? Poirot filed these details away, his mind a ledger of possibilities. Where were you, Monsieur Carver, at midnight? He asked. Tuning the piano, Louis replied, his voice gaslights. She clutched a cigarette, its tip glowing as she exhaled a plume of smoke. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice low and husky. Have you caught the monster who did this? Her eyes were rimmed with tears, but Poirot, ever observant, noted their clarity. No redness, no swelling. A performance, perhaps? Mademoiselle Hart, he said. You and Mademoiselle Beaumont were not friends, I think. Evelyn's lips tightened, her cigarette trembling. She stole everything. My songs, my fans. I was Harlem's darling before she came along. Her bitterness was palpable, a motive as clear as the notes of a trumpet. Poirot recalled the sequin from Clara's gown found near Evelyn's dressing room mirror. Planted? Or a careless trace of her presence? Where were you at midnight? He asked. Rehearsing, Evelyn said, her eyes darting away. In my room, alone. No alibi, then. Poirot's mustache quivered. And this perfume? Jasmine, no? It is the same as Mademoiselle Beaumont's. Evelyn flushed, her hand brushing her neck. It's common enough, she said defensively. Poirot smiled, but his mind was sharp. The connecting door between their dressing rooms, unlocked, offered opportunity. Had Evelyn slipped through, her envy turning to violence? Next, Poirot sought Jimmy Tate, Clara's lover, in the backstage green room. The trumpeter lounged on a sofa, his tie undone, a bottle of gin at his side. His boyish charm was marred by bloodshot eyes and a trembling lip. "I loved her," he said before Poirot could speak, his voice thick with emotion. "She was everything to me." But Poirot knew of the rumors. Clara's discovery of Jimmy's infidelity, a betrayal that had sparked a public row days before. "Love, it can turn to hate, monsieur," Poirot said, his gaze fixed on Jimmy's trumpet case. The scratch on its surface suggested haste, perhaps a struggle. "I was drinking backstage," Jimmy said, his voice slurring slightly. "Didn't see her after our last rehearsal." Poirot's eyes lingered on the handkerchief, its toll a reminder of time's passage. Poirot stood alone on the stage, the blood-stained shawl in his thoughts. Louis's ambition, Evelyn's jealousy, Jimmy's betrayal, Maggie's desperation, each a note in the symphony of murder. The shawl, the note, the cigarette, the glove, all pieces of a puzzle. But one detail gnawed at him. The piano. So close to the crime, yet silent. Had Louis hidden something in its strings? Or was another hand at play? As Poirot pondered, a stagehand's cry shattered the quiet. "Monsieur Poirot, there's a letter in Clara's costume trunk." Poirot's heart quickened, his gray cells alight. The game was deepening, and the Harlem Jazz Hall's secrets were beginning to sing. Cliffhanger. The letter, sealed with red wax, bore a single word: traitor. Chapter 3. The Rival's Lament. The Harlem Jazz Hall, shrouded in the early morning mist of 1925, stood as a monument to ambition and betrayal. The discovery of the letter in Clara Beaumont's costume trunk, a single word, traitor, scrawled in red ink and sealed with wax, had sent a chill through the gathered suspects. Hercule Poirot, his mustache as immaculate as his logic, held the letter delicately, his gray cells whirring. The word was a taunt, a clue, or perhaps a trap. "The killer, he plays a dangerous game," Poirot murmured, his voice a soft counterpoint to the creaking floorboards of the backstage corridor. The jazz hall, though silent, seemed to whisper secrets in every shadow. Inspector Daniels, his bulldog jaw set, hovered nearby, his impatience palpable. "A prank, maybe," he grunted, gesturing at the letter. "Some jealous fan stirring trouble." Poirot's eyes gleamed with disdain. "No, Inspector, this is no jest. The word traitor, it points to a wound deeper than the one that killed Mademoiselle Beaumont." He tucked the letter into his pocket, were smooth. But her eyes darted to the side, a telltale sign of deception. He recalled the sequin from Clara's gown found near Evelyn's dressing room mirror, the unlocked door connecting their rooms, the faint scent of jasmine on her skin. "You and Mademoiselle Beaumont," he said. "You were not friends, I think. Her star burned brighter and yours dimmed in its light." Evelyn's face flushed, her cigarette dropping ash onto the floor. "She stole everything," she spat, her voice rising. My songs, my fans, my place in Harlem. I was the queen of this hall before she slithered in with her smile and her voice. Her bitterness was a living thing, curling through the air like her cigarette smoke. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And this resentment, mademoiselle, it gives you motive. Where were you at midnight when Mademoiselle Beaumont met her end? Rehearsing, Evelyn said quickly, her eyes narrowing. In my room, alone, running through my scales. Poirot noted the absence of an alibi. A crack in her carefully crafted facade. Alone, you say? Yet the door between your room and hers, it was unlocked. A convenient path, no? Evelyn's hand froze, the cigarette burning down to her fingers. I didn't go near her, she said, but her voice wavered. Poirot's gray cells hummed. The sequin, the perfume, the door, all pointed to opportunity. But was it too obvious? He rose, pacing the green room, his polished shoes clicking on the hardwood. The walls were lined with posters of past performances, Clara's face dominating them all. One poster slightly askew caught his eye. He lifted it, revealing a small scratch on the wall, a fresh mark, as if something had been dragged across it. Curious, he murmured, filing it away. Turning back to Evelyn, he asked, This letter, traitor, it means something to you, I think. Did Mademoiselle Beaumont betray you? Evelyn's laugh was bitter, her eyes flashing. Betray me? She didn't need to. She took what was mine without a thought. But I didn't kill her. Jimmy Tate, Clara's lover, his trumpet case slung over his shoulder. The trumpeter's boyish charm was frayed, his eyes bloodshot from gin or grief. Monsieur Tate, Poirot said, his voice calm but firm. You loved Mademoiselle Beaumont, yet you betrayed her. This letter, traitor, it could point to you, no? Jimmy's face darkened, his hand clenching the case. I didn't betray her, he said, his voice thick. We fought, sure, but I loved her. I was backstage drinking when it happened. Poirot's eyes lingered on the trumpet case, its scratch more pronounced in the light. And this case, monsieur, it has seen some rough handling, I think. Perhaps in a struggle? Jimmy's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Poirot noted the handkerchief in his pocket, its edge still stained. Blood or a clever ruse? The heart, it is a fragile thing, Poirot said, dismissing him. Next, he sought Maggie Wells, the stage manager, in her cluttered office. Her ink-stained fingers shook as she sorted papers, her eyes avoiding Poirot's. Mademoiselle Wells, he said. You were in Mademoiselle Beaumont's room before her death, no? The fingerprint on the champagne glass, it is yours. Maggie's face paled, her hands dropping to her lap. I was delivering props, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Clara owed me money, my savings, but I didn't hurt her. Poirot's gaze fell on her coat, its pocket still bulging. And what do you hide, mademoiselle? He asked, stepping closer. Maggie flinched, her hand moving to cover the pocket. Nothing, she said too quickly. Poirot's mustache quivered. The fingerprint, the debt, the hidden object, all pointed to Maggie, but her fear seemed genuine. Was she a killer, or a pawn in a larger game? The clock struck 3, its chime a mournful echo through the jazz hall. Poirot stood in the corridor, his hands clasped behind his back, his mind a whirl of clues. The letter, traitor, his gray cells alight. The Harlem Jazz Hall was a stage of deception, and its secrets were beginning to unravel. Cliffhanger. In the orchestra pit, hidden beneath a pile of sheet music, was a bloodied scarf, its initials E.H., embroidered in silk. Chapter 4. The Lover's Secret. The Harlem Jazz Hall, cloaked in the pre-dawn gloom of 1925, seemed to hold its breath, its once vibrant pulse stilled by Clara Beaumont's murder. The discovery in the orchestra pit, a bloodied scarf embroidered with E.H., Evelyn Hart's initials, had cast a shadow over the investigation. Hercule Poirot, his mustache a precise crescent in the dim light, stood in the pit, the scarf held delicately in his gloved hands. The blood was dry, the silk torn, as if caught in a struggle. "A clue, yes," he murmured. "But is it a beacon or a deception?" His gray cells thrummed, piecing together the mosaic of the case. The blood-stained shawl, the letter marked traitor, the cryptic note in Clara's purse, the smudged champagne glass. Each was a note in a discordant melody, and Poirot was determined to find its composer. Inspector Daniels, his face etched with exhaustion, loomed beside him, his breath fogging in the chilly air. "Evelyn Hart's scarf," he said, jabbing a finger at the initials. "She's our girl, Poirot. Jealous, no alibi. And now this." Poirot's eyes gleamed with gentle reproach. "No, Inspector. The obvious. It is often a trap. This scarf, it is placed where we would find it. The killer, he is clever, but not clever enough for Hercule Poirot." He folded the scarf, handing it to a constable, and turned his attention to the orchestra pit. Sheet music lay scattered, some pages crumpled, as if someone had rummaged in haste. A single trumpet mute, dented, caught his eye. "Curious," he said, slipping it into his pocket. The investigation led Poirot to the backstage green room, where Jimmy Tate, Clara's lover, slouched, tightened, his fingers brushing the case's scratch. "Dropped it after rehearsal," he muttered. "Clumsy, that's all." Poirot's mustache twitched. The scratch was deep, the metal dented, suggesting more than a casual drop. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Jimmy's. "And this handkerchief," he said, gesturing to the stained cloth peeking from Jimmy's pocket. "It bears a mark. Blood, perhaps?" Jimmy's face paled, his hand covering the handkerchief. "Nosebleed," he said quickly. "Happens all the time." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The smallest detail, it tells the greatest truth. Rising, Poirot paced the green room, its walls lined with faded posters of Clara's performances. One poster, torn at the corner, revealed a photograph tucked behind it. Clara and Jimmy, their arms entwined, her smile radiant. But the photo was sliced in half, Jimmy's half missing. "A lover's quarrel, no?" Poirot said, holding up the torn image. Jimmy's eyes widened, then narrowed. "She was mad, sure, but we'd have worked it out." His voice cracked, betraying a raw edge. Poirot filed this away, his mind turning to the note in Clara's purse. "Meet me at midnight. We end this tonight." Was Jimmy the rendezvous? Leaving Jimmy to his gin, Poirot returned to the stage, where the grand piano stood like a silent witness. The hairpin he'd found in its strings, bent, not Clara's, gnawed at him. It suggested another presence, perhaps Maggie Wells, whose hair was often pinned back. He moved to the orchestra pit, examining the scattered sheet music. One page for Midnight Blues bore a faint smudge of lipstick, not Clara's ruby red, but a softer pink. Evelyn's shade, perhaps. The scarf, the lipstick, the initials, all pointed to her. But Poirot's instincts whispered of misdirection. In the corridor, he encountered Evelyn Hart, her red hair a fiery cascade under the gaslights. She clutched a cigarette, its smoke curling like a confession. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low. "Band leader," in the lounge. Louis's slicked-back hair was disheveled, his whiskey glass empty. "Monsieur Carver," Poirot said, "you were near the piano at midnight, no? Yet the stagehand says you lingered, your hands restless." Louis's fingers drummed the table, his eyes avoiding Poirot's. "Tuning takes time," he said. "Clara was alive when I left the stage." Poirot recalled the torn program with Louis's initials, the ink stain on his suit. "And this resentment, monsieur, for her fame. It festers, I think." Louis's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Finally, Poirot found Maggie Wells in her office, her ink-stained fingers sorting ledgers with frantic energy. "Mademoiselle Wells," he said, "you owed Clara money, yet you were in her room. The fingerprint, it does not lie." Maggie's eyes darted to her coat, its pocket still bulging. "I delivered props," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't kill her." Poirot stepped closer, his gaze on the pocket. "And what do you hide, mademoiselle?" Maggie's hand covered it, her face pale. "Nothing," she whispered, but her fear was palpable. The clock struck 4, its chime a mournful echo through the jazz hall. Poirot stood in the corridor, his hands clasped behind his back, his mind a whirl of clues. The scarf, with Evelyn's initials, was too convenient. Jimmy's betrayal, marked by the torn photo and stained handkerchief, suggested passion turned violent. Louis's ambition and Maggie's desperation were equally compelling. The hairpin, the lipstick, the note, all pointed to a complex web of deceit. Poirot returned to Clara's dressing room, his eyes sweeping the scene. The smudged glass, the cigarette butt, the glove, the torn program, each a thread in the tapestry. He knelt by the vanity, his fingers brushing a small object beneath it. A single pearl earring, not Clara's, whose jewelry was emerald. "Another woman," he murmured, his mind turning to Evelyn or Maggie. But the trumpet mute in the pit suggested Jimmy, its dent a sign of struggle. As he pondered, Chapter 5. The Manager's Debt. The Harlem Jazz Hall, cloaked in the pre-dawn shadows of 1925, seemed to pulse with the weight of its secrets. The discovery of Clara Beaumont's diary, its final entry, "He betrayed me, but I know the truth," written in her elegant hand, had sharpened the edges of Hercule Poirot's investigation. The tiny key that unlocked the diary had been found tucked beneath the vanity mirror, a deliberate placement that suggested Clara had hidden it with care. Poirot, his mustache a precise arc in the dim light of the dressing room, turned the diary's pages with gloved fingers, his gray cells humming. The word "he" pointed to a man. Jimmy Tate, perhaps, with his infidelity, or Louis Carver, whose ambition chafed under Clara's star. But the truth, as Poirot knew, was a slippery thing, and the Harlem Jazz Hall was a stage of deception. Inspector Daniels, his bulldog face etched with fatigue, hovered nearby, his breath visible in the chilly air. "That diary's the key, Poirot," he said, jabbing a finger at it. "Point straight to the trumpeter, Tate." Lovers' quarrel turned deadly. Poirot's eyes gleamed with gentle reproach. "No, Inspector. The heart. It is a labyrinth, and this he may be a shadow cast by another. We must tread carefully." He tucked the diary into his coat, his mind weaving together the clues. The bloodied scarf with Evelyn's initials, the torn photo of Jimmy and Clara, the cryptic letter marked "traitor," the hairpin in the piano. Each was a note in a discordant melody, and Poirot was determined to find its composer. The investigation led him to Maggie Wells, the stage manager, whose ink-stained fingers and harried demeanor marked her as a woman stretched thin. Poirot found her in her cramped office, a cluttered space filled with ledgers, props lists, and the faint scent of stale coffee. Maggie sat at her desk, her hands trembling as she sorted papers, her eyes avoiding Poirot's. The bulge in her coat pocket, noted earlier, still gnawed at him. A secret hidden in plain with your print suggests you lingered. What did you see, mademoiselle? Maggie's eyes widened, her breath catching. Nothing, she said, too quickly. I left before it happened. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. And this pocket, he said, gesturing to her coat. It holds something, I think. Something you fear to reveal. Maggie's hand shot to the coat, her face flushing. It's nothing, she stammered, but her fear was palpable. Rising, Poirot paced the office, his polished shoes clicking on the worn floor. The walls were papered with schedules and posters, one of Clara's performances torn at the edge as if ripped in frustration. He paused, his fingers brushing a ledger on Maggie's desk. Its pages, filled with meticulous notes, showed a debt of $3,000 to Maggie, marked unpaid in red ink. This sum, he said, tapping the ledger. It is your life savings, no? And Mademoiselle Beaumont? She refused to pay. Maggie nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. She promised me a cut of her profits, but she laughed when I asked. Said I was nothing without her. Poirot's gray cells churned. Maggie's desperation was a motive, her access to the dressing room undeniable. The hairpin in the piano, bent and not Clara's, suggested a woman's presence, perhaps Maggie, whose hair was often pinned back. But her fear, so raw, hinted at innocence, or a deeper secret. He moved to the coat, his hand hovering over the pocket. May I, mademoiselle? He asked. Maggie hesitated, then nodded, her hands trembling. Poirot reached inside, retrieving a crumpled ticket stub from Clara's final performance, its edges stained with ink. You kept this, he said, his voice soft. Why? Maggie's voice broke. It was a keepsake. I admired her, even after everything. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Admiration exhaled. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice husky. Any closer to catching Clara's killer? Her eyes were sharp, but her hand trembled, betraying nerves. Poirot recalled the scarf with her initials, the lipstick on the sheet music. Mademoiselle Hart, he said. Your scarf, found in the pit, suggests your presence. And your alibi. It is thin. Evelyn's lips tightened. I told you I lost that scarf. Someone setting me up. Her defiance was fierce, but Poirot noted the pink lipstick on her cigarette, matching the smudge. The truth. It will sing, he said. Next, he sought Jimmy Tate in the green room, where the trumpeter nursed a fresh bottle of gin. His trumpet case, scratched and dented, sat at his feet. Monsieur Tate, Poirot said, this diary entry, he betrayed me. It points to you, no? Your infidelity. It wounded Mademoiselle Beaumont. Jimmy's eyes flashed, his hand clenching the bottle. I loved her, he said, his voice thick. We fought, but I didn't kill her." Poirot's gaze lingered on the handkerchief. It stained darker in the light. "And this mark, monsieur? It is blood, I think." Jimmy's face paled, but he said nothing. Finally, Poirot found Louis Carver in the lounge, his whiskey glass empty, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm. "Monsieur Carver," Poirot said, "you were near the piano at midnight, no? Yet the stagehand says you lingered, your hands busy." Louis's eyes darted away. "Just tuning," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Poirot recalled the torn program with Louis's initials, the ink stain on his suit. "Your ambition. It chafed under her fame," he said. Louis's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. The clock struck 5, its chime a mournful echo through the jazz hall. Poirot stood in the corridor, his hands clasped behind his back, his mind a whirl of clues. Maggie's dead end fingerprint were damning, but her fear suggested a deeper truth. Jimmy's betrayal, Evelyn's jealousy, Louis's ambition, each was bore a single initial. M.W. Chapter 6. The Hidden Blade. The Harlem Jazz Hall, steeped in the murky twilight of 1925, seemed to breathe with the weight of its secrets. The discovery of a bloodied glove in the props room, embroidered with the initials M.W., Maggie Wells, had tightened the noose of suspicion around the stage manager. Hercule Poirot, his mustache a precise crescent in the flickering gaslight, held the glove with gloved fingers, its satin surface marred by dark, crusted blood. The glove matched the one found in Clara Beaumont's dressing room, suggesting a pair, and its placement among the props felt deliberate, a taunt or a trap. "The killer, he weaves a clever web," Poirot murmured, his gray cells humming with the rhythm of the case. The diary entry, "He betrayed me, but I know the truth," clashed with the glove's initials, muddying the waters. Was Maggie the he Clara feared? Or was another hand at play? Inspector Daniels, his bulldog face creased with certainty, loomed nearby, his voice gruff. "That's it, Poirot. Maggie Wells caught red-handed. Her print on the glass, her glove with blood, case closed." Poirot's eyes gleamed with gentle disdain. "No, Inspector. The obvious, it is a siren song, luring us to folly. This glove, it is placed to be found, like the scarf with Mademoiselle Hart's initials. We must look deeper." He tucked the glove into his pocket, his mind weaving together the clues. The blood-stained shawl, the letter marked traitor, the torn photo, the hairpin in the piano, the diary's cryptic words. Each was a note in a discordant symphony, and Poirot was determined to find its conductor. The investigation led him back to the stage, where the grand piano stood like a silent sentinel. The hairpin he'd found in its strings, bent, not Clara's, gnawed at him. And the stagehands claimed that Maggie lingered nearby at midnight, sharpened his focus. Poirot lifted the piano lid, his eye scanning the strings for further her office, her ink-stained fingers trembling as she sorted papers, her eyes red-rimmed. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and anxiety. "Mademoiselle Wells," he began, settling into a chair, his voice calm but piercing. "This glove with your initials, it is found with blood. And your fingerprint, it places you in Mademoiselle Beaumont's room. You hide something, no?" Maggie's hands froze, a ledger slipping to the floor. "I didn't kill her," she whispered, her voice breaking. "That glove, I lost it days ago. Someone's framing me." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Framing, you say? Like Mademoiselle Hart's scarf, perhaps. Yet your debt, it was a heavy burden. $3,000, your savings, gone. Maggie's eyes brimmed with tears. Clara promised me a cut of her profits, she said, her voice raw. I gave her everything to keep this hall running, and she laughed at me. But I didn't touch her. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. And this pocket, he said, gesturing to her coat. It holds a secret, I think. Maggie's hand shot to the coat, her face paling. It's nothing, she stammered, but her fear was palpable. He rose, pacing the office, his polished shoes clicking on the worn floor. The ledger on Maggie's desk showed the debt in red ink, a stark reminder of her desperation. A torn ticket stub from Clara's last performance, found in her pocket earlier, lay on the desk, its edges stained with ink. You kept this, mademoiselle, Poirot said, holding it up. A keepsake, or a mark of guilt? Maggie's voice broke. I admired her. Even after she betrayed me, I couldn't hurt her. Poirot's gray cells churned. Admiration or a killer's remorse? Leaving Maggie, Poirot sought Evelyn Hart in the green room, where she stood smoking a cigarette, her red hair a fiery cascade. Mademoiselle Hart, he said. This glove, it shifts a pocket. And this mute, he said, producing the dented piece from the orchestra pit. It was yours, I think. Dropped in haste. Jimmy's face paled, but he said nothing. Finally, Poirot sought Louis Carver in the lounge, where the band leader sat with an empty whiskey glass. Monsieur Carver, Poirot said, you are near the piano at midnight, no? The hairpin, it suggests a woman, yet your lingering hands trouble me. Louis' fingers drummed the table, his eyes avoiding Poirot's. I was tuning, he said, his voice flat. Poirot recalled the torn program with Louis' initials, the ink stain on his suit. Your ambition, it chafed under her fame, he said. Louis' jaw tightened, but he remained silent. The clock struck 6, its chime a mournful echo through the jazz hall. Poirot stood on the stage, his hands clasped behind his back, his mind a whirl of clues. Maggie's glove, her fingerprint, her debt, all were damning, but her fear hinted at innocence. Evelyn's scarf, her jealousy, her thin alibi pointed to guilt, yet the planted clues suggested a frame. Jimmy's betrayal, marked by the torn photo and stained handkerchief, suggested passion turned violent. Louis' ambition, his proximity to the piano, remained a shadow. The diary's he complicated the puzzle, pointing to a man, yet the hairpin and glove suggested a woman. Poirot returned to the dressing room, his eyes sweeping the scene anew. The smudged glass, the cigarette butt, the torn program, the pearl earring, each whispered of a presence beyond Clara's. He knelt by the vanity, his fingers brushing a small object beneath it, a broken hairpin matching the one from the piano. 2 hairpins, he murmured, his mind turning to Maggie. But the diary's he suggested Jimmy or Louis, complicating the web. He moved to the piano, lifting the lid once more. A faint glint caught his eye, a letter opener, wedged deep in the strings, its blade stained with blood. The weapon, he whispered, his heart quickening. It was engraved with weapons discovery, wedged deep in the piano's strings. Confirmed it as the instrument of Clara Beaumont's death, and its placement implicated those with access to the stage. Maggie Wells, whose station was nearby, and Louis Carver, who had lingered by the piano at midnight. Poirot, his mustache a precise arc in the dim light, held the note, its hasty ink a taunt from the killer. The key. It is literal and figurative, he murmured, his gray cells humming with the rhythm of the case. The Harlem Jazz Hall was a stage of deception, and its secrets were beginning to unravel. Inspector Daniels, his bulldog face creased with impatience, stood beside Poirot on the stage, his breath fogging in the chilly air. Maggie Wells, no question, he grunted, gesturing to the piano. Her glove, her fingerprint, and now this note pointing to the piano where she works. She's our killer. Poirot's eyes gleamed with gentle reproach. Non, Inspector. The killer, he is clever, weaving a web of clues to ensnare another. This note, it is too convenient, like the glove and the scarf. We must question the alibis, for they crumble under scrutiny. His mind wove together the clues. The blood-stained shawl, the letter marked traitor, the torn photo, the diary's cryptic he, the hairpin, the scarf with Evelyn's initials. Each was a note in a discordant symphony, and Poirot was determined to find its conductor. The investigation led him to Maggie Wells, whose ink-stained fingers and trembling demeanor marked her as a woman on the edge. Poirot found her in the orchestra pit, sorting sheet music with frantic energy, as if work could shield her from suspicion. The air was thick with the scent of dust and old paper, and the dim light cast shadows across her pale face. Mademoiselle Wells, Poirot began, settling on a nearby chair, his voice calm but piercing. This note, it points to the piano, where you were seen after the show. The letter opener, it was hidden there. And your glove, it is brimmed with tears. I was angry, yes, but I didn't hurt her. I admired her, even after she betrayed me. Poirot recalled the ticket stub in her pocket, stained with ink, and the broken pen nib found under the vanity. And this stub, he said, producing it. You kept it as a keepsake. Why? Maggie's voice broke. It was her last show. I wanted something of hers. Admiration, or a killer's trophy. He rose, pacing the orchestra pit, his polished shoes clicking on the hardwood. The scattered sheet music bore faint smudges, ink, not lipstick, suggesting Maggie's touch. A page for Midnight Blues, Clara's opening song, was crumpled, as if gripped in anger. Poirot's gray cells churned. Maggie's desperation was a motive, her access to the piano undeniable. The glove, the fingerprint, the note, all pointed to her. But her fear hinted at a deeper truth. Was she a killer? Or a pawn in a larger game? Leaving Maggie, Poirot sought Evelyn Hart in the green room, where she stood smoking a cigarette, her red hair glowing under the gaslights. Mademoiselle Hart, he said, this note. It shifts suspicion to the piano. Yet your scarf, found in the pit, suggests you were there. Your alibi. It crumbles, no? Evelyn's cigarette trembled, her eyes narrowing. I told you I lost that scarf, and I was rehearsing alone at midnight. Her voice was sharp, but Poirot noted the pink lipstick on her cigarette, matching the smudge on the sheet music. Your jealousy, it burned brightly, he said. Did it lead you to the piano, to hide the weapon? Evelyn's face flushed. I didn't touch her, she insisted, but her alibi remained thin. Next, he found Jimmy Tate backstage, his trumpet case at his feet, a bottle of gin in hand. Monsieur Tate, Poirot said, this diary entry, he betrayed me. It points to you, no? And this mute found in the pit,
It is yours." He produced the dented mute, its surface scratched. Jimmy's eyes flashed, his hand clenching the bottle.
A whirl of clues. Maggie's glove, her fingerprint, her presence by the piano. All were damning, but her fear suggested innocence. Evelyn's scarf, her jealousy, her thin alibi pointed to guilt, yet the planted clues hinted at a frame. Jimmy's betrayal, marked by the torn photo and stained handkerchief, suggested passion turned violent. Lewis's ambition, his lingering by the piano, remained a shadow. The diary's "he" pointed to a man, yet the glove and hairpin suggested a woman. Poirot returned to the piano, lifting the lid once more. The scratch on the wood, where the letter opener had been wedged, was fresh, suggesting recent handling. He examined the strings, finding a faint residue. Ink, not blood. Maggie's touch, perhaps, he murmured, recalling her ink-stained fingers. But the note's key suggested more, a literal key, perhaps, like the one that unlocked Clara's diary. He checked the piano's bench, finding a hidden compartment, empty but scratched, as if something small had been removed. He moved to the dressing room, his eyes sweeping the scene anew. The smudged glass, the cigarette butt, the pearl earring, the broken pen nib, each whispered of a presence beyond Clara's. He knelt by the vanity, his fingers brushing a small object beneath it. A single sequin, matching Clara's gown, but loose, as if torn in a struggle. "A moment of violence," he said, slipping it into his pocket. As he pondered, a stagehand's cry shattered the silence. "Monsieur Poirot, there's a locket in the costume trunk." Poirot's heart quickened, his gray cells alight. The Harlem Jazz Hall was a stage of secrets, and its truth was beginning to sing. Cliffhanger. The locket, silver and heart-shaped, contained a tiny photo of Clara and Maggie smiling together, with a note inside. "Forgive me." Chapter 8. The Diary's Clue. The Harlem Jazz Hall, bathed in the ghostly light of dawn in 1925, seemed to hold its breath, its walls heavy with the secrets of Clara Beaumont's murder. "Maggie Wells, no doubt about it," he said, gesturing to the locket. Her glove, her fingerprint, and now this locket tying her to Clara. She snapped over that debt. Poirot's eyes gleamed with gentle reproach. "No, Inspector. The locket, it speaks of friendship, not murder. The killer, he uses these clues to mislead. We must follow the diary's truth." He tucked the locket into his pocket, his mind racing. The diary's entry, "He betrayed me, but I know the truth," pointed to a man, yet the locket and gloves suggested Maggie. The puzzle was deepening, and the Harlem Jazz Hall was a stage of shadows. The investigation led Poirot to Clara's dressing room, where the diary lay on the vanity, its pages a window into her final days. He opened it, his fingers tracing the elegant script. An entry from a week prior caught his eye. "Maggie begs for her money, but I cannot pay. She thinks me cruel, but I have my reasons. The traitor is closer than she knows." Poirot's mustache twitched. The traitor echoed the letter found in the costume trunk, but the reference to Maggie suggested a rift, not violence. Another entry, dated the night of the murder, read, "Midnight meeting, to settle things. I fear what he will do." The he again, Jimmy Tate with his infidelity, or Lewis Carver with his ambition. Or was it a misdirection, hiding a woman's hand? Poirot paced the dressing room, his polished shoes clicking on the hardwood. the smudged champagne glass, the cigarette butt, the pearl earring, the broken pen nib, all whispered of a presence beyond Clara's. The locket's photo showing Clara and Maggie in happier times suggested a bond broken by betrayal. Was Maggie's desperation enough to kill? Or was she a scapegoat, her glove and fingerprint planted to deceive? Poirot's gray cells churned, piecing together the timeline. Clara was alive at 11:30, arguing with Maggie, dead by midnight. The piano where the letter opener was hidden was near Maggie's station, but Louis, Evelyn, and Jimmy had access too. He sought locket a week ago, said she'd make it right. But she laughed when I asked for my money that night. Poirot recalled the ticket stub in Maggie's pocket, the broken pen nib. "And this stub," he said, producing it. "You kept it as a memory of her, or of your rage?" Maggie's face paled. "A memory," she said. "I admired her, even after everything." Admiration, or a killer's remorse. Leaving Maggie, Poirot sought Evelyn Hart in the green room, where she stood smoking a cigarette, her red hair a fiery cascade. "Mademoiselle Hart," he said, "this locket shifts suspicion to Mademoiselle Wells, yet your scarf found in the pit suggests you were there. Your jealousy, it is a powerful motive, no?" Evelyn's cigarette trembled, her eyes narrowing. "I told you I lost that scarf, and I was rehearsing, alone at midnight." Her voice was sharp, but Poirot noted the pink lipstick on her cigarette, matching the smudge on the sheet music. "The diary, it speaks of a traitor," he said. "Did Mademoiselle Beaumont steal more than your spotlight?" Evelyn's face flushed. "She took everything," she spat, but her eyes held a flicker of doubt. Next, he found Jimmy Take backstage, his trumpet case scratched and dented, a bottle of gin in hand. "Monsieur Tate," Poirot said, "this diary entry, he betrayed me. It points to you, no? Your infidelity, it wounded her deeply." Jimmy's eyes flashed, his hand clenching the bottle. "I loved her," he said, his voice thick. "We fought, but I didn't kill her." Poirot's gaze lingered on the stained handkerchief in Jimmy's pocket. "And this blood, monsieur, it tells a story, I think." Jimmy's face paled, but he said nothing. The dented trumpet mute found in the pit suggested haste, perhaps a struggle. Finally, Poirot sought Louis Carver in the lounge, where the band leader sat with an empty whiskey glass. "Monsieur Carver," Poirot said, "you were near the piano at midnight, no? The letter opener, hidden there, points to..." Poirot returned to the dressing room, his eyes sweeping the scene anew. The smudged glass, the cigarette butt, the pearl earring, the sequin, each whispered of a presence beyond Clara's. He knelt by the vanity, his fingers brushing a small object beneath it. A tiny key, not the diary's but similar, as if from another locket or box. "Another secret," he murmured, slipping it into his pocket. The diary's mention of a midnight meeting to settle things suggested a confrontation. But with whom? Maggie, over the debt? Jimmy, over his betrayal? Or another? He moved to the piano, lifting the lid once more. The scratch where the letter opener had been hidden was fresh, the ink residue suggesting Maggie's touch. But the note, "The piano holds the key," implied more. Poirot checked the piano's bench again, finding the hidden compartment empty but scratched, as if a small box had been removed. "The key, it is literal," he said, his heart quickening. As he pondered, a stagehand's cry shattered the silence. "Monsieur Poirot, there's a program in the lighting booth marked with blood." Poirot's gray cells flared, his heart racing. The Harlem Jazz Hall was a stage of deception, and its truth was beginning to sing. Cliffhanger. The program, from Clara's final show, bore a single word in blood: liar. Chapter 9. The reenactment. The Harlem Jazz Hall, shrouded in the pale light of a 1925 morning, stood as a silent witness to the tragedy of Clara Beaumont's murder. The discovery of a program from her final show, marked with the word liar in blood, had intensified the puzzle, its crimson scrawl a taunt from the killer. Hercule Poirot, his mustache a precise arc in the dim glow of the stage, held the program delicately, his gray cells humming with the rhythm of the case. The word liar echoed the diaries "He betrayed me" and the letters "traitor," weaving a thread of deceit through the clues. The bloodied glove with Evelyn Hart, Jimmy Tate, and Maggie Wells, in the Jazz Hall's auditorium. "Mes amis," he said, his voice clear and commanding, "we shall recreate the night of Mademoiselle Beaumont's death. The truth, it hides in the details, and Hercule Poirot will uncover it." The suspects exchanged uneasy glances, their faces pale under the chandelier's golden glow. The stage, framed by crimson curtains, became a tableau of suspicion, its silence heavy with anticipation. Poirot began the reenactment at 11:30 p.m., the last moment Clara was seen alive. He positioned Maggie in the dressing room, delivering props, as she had claimed. "Mademoiselle Wells," he said, leading her to the vanity, "you argued with Mademoiselle Beaumont about your debt, no?" Maggie nodded, her ink-stained fingers trembling. "She laughed at me," she whispered. "I left her alive." Poirot noted the smudged champagne glass, the cigarette butt, the pearl earring. Clues of a presence beyond Clara's. "You left, but your fingerprint remained," he said, his gaze piercing. Maggie's eyes darted to her coat pocket, still bulging, but she said nothing. Next, he placed Louis Carver at the piano, where he claimed to be tuning at midnight. "Monsieur Carver," Poirot said, gesturing to the strings, "you lingered here, no? The letter opener, hidden in these strings, suggests your hand." Louis's slicked-back hair glistened with sweat, his fingers drumming nervously. "I was tuning," he insisted, his voice flat. "I didn't see Clara after rehearsal." Poirot recalled the torn program with Louis's initials, the ink stain on his suit. "Your ambition, it chafed under her fame," he said. Louis's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Evelyn Hart was positioned in her dressing room adjacent to Clara's, the unlocked connecting door a silent accusation. "Mademoiselle Hart," Poirot said, "you were rehearsing, alone, you say. Yet the scarf with your initials found in the pit and the lipstick on the sheet music suggest otherwise." Evelyn's red hair flared under the gaslights, her cigarette trembling, shoes clicking, his mind reconstructing the timeline. At 11:30, Clara was alive, arguing with Maggie. By midnight, she was dead, stabbed with the letter opener, which was later hidden in the piano. The glove, the scarf, the locket, the program, all were planted, Poirot suspected, to shift blame. The diary's "he" suggested a man, yet the glove and hairpin pointed to a woman. "The killer, he or she, plays a double game," he murmured, his gray cells alight. He turned to Maggie, his voice sharp. "Mademoiselle Wells, you were near the piano after the show, no? The stagehand saw you, nervous, lingering. You hid the letter opener, I think." Maggie's face flushed, her hands twisting. "I found it," she stammered. "It was on the stage, bloodied. I panicked and hid it in the piano, but I didn't kill her." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Her admission explained the weapon's placement, but not the murder. "And this locket," he said, producing it. "It speaks of friendship, yet you argued. Why keep it?" Maggie's tears spilled. "She was my friend once," she said. "I couldn't let go." Poirot moved to the piano, lifting the lid. The scratch where the letter opener had been hidden was fresh, the ink residue suggesting Maggie's touch. The note. "The piano holds the key. It was yours, no? To mislead us?" Maggie shook her head, her voice breaking. "I didn't write it, I swear." Poirot's mustache twitched. Her fear was genuine, but her actions, hiding the weapon, keeping the ticket stub, were damning. He turned to Evelyn. "Mademoiselle Hart, the sequin from Clara's gown, found near your mirror, suggests you were in her room. The scarf, the lipstick, they point to you." Evelyn's cigarette fell, her face paling. "I wasn't there," she said, but her voice wavered. Poirot recalled the unlocked door, her thin alibi. "Your jealousy, it is a fire," he said. Maggie's glove, her fingerprint, her admission about the letter opener, all were damning, but her tears suggested innocence. Evelyn's scarf, her jealousy, her thin alibi pointed to guilt, yet the planted clues hinted at a frame. Jimmy's betrayal, marked by the torn photo and stained handkerchief, suggested passion turned violent. Louis's ambition, his proximity to the piano, remained a shadow. The diary's he pointed to a man, yet the glove and locket suggested a woman. Poirot returned to the dressing room, his eyes sweeping the scene anew. The smudged glass, the cigarette butt, the pearl earring, the sequin, each whispered of a presence beyond Clara's. He knelt by the vanity, his fingers brushing a small object beneath it. A tiny button, from a woman's coat, not Clara's. "Maggie's, perhaps," he murmured, recalling her bulging pocket. But the diary's he suggested Jimmy or Louis, complicating the web. As he pondered, Maggie's sudden movement caught his eye. She bolted for the exit, her coat flapping, her face a mask of panic. "Stop her!" Poirot cried, his heart quickening. The Harlem Jazz Hall was a stage of secrets, and its truth was slipping away. As Maggie reached the door, a small object fell from her pocket. A key, matching the one from Clara's diary, glinting in the light. Chapter 10. The Songbird's End. The Harlem Jazz Hall, bathed in the cold light of a 1925 dawn, stood as a silent monument to Clara Beaumont's tragic end. The key that fell from Maggie Wells's pocket as she bolted for the exit, a small, silver key, matching the one that unlocked Clara's diary, had brought the investigation to a crescendo. Hercule Poirot, his mustache a precise arc in the dim glow of the auditorium, caught the glint of the key as it skittered across the hardwood floor. His heart quickened, his gray cells alight with the certainty that the truth was within reach. "Arrêtez, mademoiselle," he called, his voice sharp but controlled, as Inspector Daniels lunged to apprehend Maggie. The stagehand's shout still echoed in his mind, and the Wells were gathered in the auditorium, their faces pale under the chandelier's golden glow. Poirot stood center stage, his hands clasped behind his back, his voice clear and commanding. "Mes amis," he began, "the murder of Mademoiselle Clara Beaumont is a symphony of deception, but Hercule Poirot has found its melody. Let us unravel the threads." His gaze swept over the suspects, each a note in the discordant score. The bloodied glove with Maggie's initials, the scarf with Evelyn's, the letter opener in the piano. The locket with Clara and Maggie's photo. The program marked liar. The key, now in his hand, was the final chord. Poirot turned to Maggie, her ink-stained fingers trembling, her eyes wide with fear. "Mademoiselle Wells," he said, holding up the key. "This unlocks Mademoiselle Beaumont's diary, no? Yet you fled when it fell. Why?" Maggie's voice broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't kill her," she sobbed. "I found the key in her room after she was dead. I took it thinking it might protect me." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Protect you or hide your guilt? Your glove, your fingerprint, the letter opener hidden in the piano, all point to you." He paced the stage, his polished shoes clicking, his mind reconstructing the night of the murder. "Let us return to 11:30 p.m., he said. "Clara Beaumont was alive, arguing with you, Mademoiselle Wells, about your debt, $3,000, your life's savings. She laughed, refused to pay, and you left angry. But you returned, no?" Maggie shook her head, her sobs choking her words. "I didn't," she whispered. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "The fingerprint on the glass, the glove, the ticket stub you kept, they tell a different story." He turned to Evelyn Hart, her red hair glowing under the gaslights, her cigarette extinguished. "Mademoiselle Hart, your jealousy burned brightly. The scarf with your initials, the sequin from Clara's gown under Clara's fame. The torn program with your initials, the ink on your suit. You're lingering by the piano. They point to you." Louis's fingers stopped drumming, his jaw tight. "I didn't need to kill her," he said. "She'd have faded." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "But you wanted the spotlight now, no?" Poirot returned to Maggie, his voice softening. "Mademoiselle Wells, let us consider the truth. You argued with Clara at 11:30. She laughed at your pleas, mocked your desperation. In a moment of rage, you seized the letter opener, engraved with CB, and struck her heart. You hid the weapon in the piano, where you worked, and took the diary's key, hoping to conceal her secrets. The glove, the ticket stub, the locket. They were not planted, but yours, left in panic." Maggie's sobs grew louder, her body trembling. "No," she whispered, but her eyes betrayed her. Poirot held up the locket, its photo of Clara and Maggie gleaming. "This locket, it speaks of friendship. Yet you felt betrayed. Clara's refusal to pay, her laughter, it was too much. You kept the ticket stub, a memory of her final show, and the key, to hide her words. But the truth, it sings." Maggie's legs buckled and she sank to the floor, her voice a wail. "She laughed at me," she sobbed. "I gave her everything, my savings, my life. I didn't mean to. I grabbed the opener, and it just happened." The auditorium fell silent, the suspects' faces frozen. Daniels stepped forward, cuffs in hand. "Maggie Wells, you're under arrest," he said, his voice firm. Maggie didn't resist, her tears falling as she was led away. Poirot sighed, his heart heavy. "The human heart, it sings a tragic tune," he murmured. "The scarf, the sequin, the handkerchief. They were red herrings, distractions from Maggie's desperate act. The diary's he was a misdirection, perhaps Clara's fear of a male accomplice, but Maggie's rage had been the cigarette butt, the pearl earring, the sequin. Each had played its part, but the locket and key were the heart of the puzzle. Clara's death was no grand conspiracy, only a woman scorned by broken promises. Her rage a fleeting, fatal note. The Harlem Jazz Hall, once alive with music, stood silent, its songbird gone forever. Poirot adjusted his overcoat, his polished shoes clicking as he left the stage. The case was closed, the truth revealed. But the weight of human frailty lingered. "Adieu, Mademoiselle Beaumont," he whispered, stepping into the dawn. The fog had lifted, but the jazz hall's shadows remained. Resolution. Maggie Wells was arrested for Clara Beaumont's murder, her confession sealing her fate. Hercule Poirot left Harlem, his gray cells at rest, the puzzle solved. The Harlem Jazz Hall would sing again, but its brightest star was silenced forever.